So I visited Berlin, Germany last fall and was blown away by what I saw. It's, of course, one of the world's great cities like Chicago and chock full of very important history. Here's the famous Brandenburg Gate. Here's Checkpoint Charlie. Here's the Wall. So why am I doing a show and tell of my trip? Well, the biggest impression Berlin made on me was the ease and reliability of its swift mass transit system. The urban U-Bahn trains run every 3 to 5 minutes during peak periods, and it merges seamlessly with the commuter S-Bahn for a 24/7 mega system that gets you where you need to go on time. Like this fantastic dance party I went to at an underground Berlin club. Which brings me to the CTA. We love it when it's running on time. We hate it when we have to wait 20 minutes in the bone-chilling cold only to get ghosted by a bus that never arrives. So what would it take for the Chicago region to have a mass transit system like Berlin? I posed that question to Aaron Aleman, head of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning.
Ooh. Lots of money.
Aleman did a massive study paving the way for a transit system that would rival any in the world, and she has a specific dollar amount in mind to make it happen.
Our report puts forth that we need $1.5 billion on an annual basis for our transit system to really be that system of the future to get people to where they need to go.
Get this. A handful of state lawmakers are promising that exact amount, $1.5 billion a year to the CTA, PACE, and Metra. But there's a catch. All of those separate agencies would have to get rid of their separate presidents, their separate bureaucracies, their separate boards, and merge into one region-wide super agency. Here's one of the sponsors of the proposal.
I imagine a time where riders will enjoy a seamless experience where they can easily jump on a bus or a train, feel safe, feel comfortable, pay one universal fare, and arrive at their destination on time.
Oh, one can certainly dream. Consumers could hop between any transit system using one fare card. Sign me up. So, Governor Pritzker, are you on board?
Sounds great. Reorganization always, when you're unhappy with something, reorganization always sounds good, but you better be reorganizing to the benefit of the system. And so that's all I was saying is, passing a bill as was introduced in Springfield to just throw them all together without having some hearings, without hearing from all three of the agencies about what they think they need to do better, I think is folly.
All right, so a chilly reception from the governor. Let's slow this train down a bit and hear from the heads of each of the transit systems. They got a chance to speak their mind at a public hearing this week, starting with PACE.
I do not believe that combining us into one organization will make us better.
Huh. Okay, so PACE is not so keen on it. CTA faces a potential big budget shortfall. Maybe it wants to offload some of those responsibilities onto a new super agency.
The mayor of the city of Chicago believes that he is responsible for public transportation, and the governance model for CTA reflects that. I believe that the city of Chicago and CTA are both of the opinion that the governance model is not the problem here.
So, no. Okay. Metra?
I think it's important that the local representation, meaning in our case the Collier counties and suburban Cook, have some voice in what happens with Metro operations, and that could get minimized or lost in a grand board.
So none of the heads of the three major transit systems like the idea of a merger. What they like is the idea of more money. And lawmakers say that money will only come if they agree to merge into one. That means the loss of cushy board jobs with perks and benefits and lots of political chits for the public officials that appoint allies to those jobs. Let's not forget about the time Mayor Brandon Johnson attempted to appoint campaign supporter Reverend Ira Ackrey to the RTA board, only to have it backfire when he revealed at his confirmation hearing that he didn't know all that much about public transit. So let's take a look at the makeup of these boards. The Regional Transportation Authority has a 16-member board appointed by the mayor and the boards of Cook, DuPage, Will, Lake, McHenry, and Kane counties. The CTA has 7 board members appointed by the mayor and governor. Metra, 11 board members appointed by the mayor and board presidents of the aforementioned counties. And PACE, 13 members, same deal, appointed by the county boards. What's clear is everyone would like a transit system like Berlin's. What's not clear is nobody knows where the money is going to come to make that happen. And this is coming as federal COVID dollars are running out and the transit systems face a more than $700 million budget deficit in the coming year. That could mean painful choices about service cuts and fare hikes. The discussion on the future of mass transit has left the station, and the merger bill is a sign that lawmakers are at least on the right track. And now, some more of that dance party. And that's our opening shot for tonight. And I want to hear from you. How would you make the region's transit system better? What irritates you or thrills you about it? Send me an email, or better yet, a video message at parisonpolitics@fox.com. That's parisonpolitics@fox.com. And we will show some of your responses next week.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Another Illinois congressman calls on President Biden to step aside. We preview next week's Republican National Convention with an Illinois Republican congressman. And Delta 8 dangers, how the unregulated weed product drove one Illinoisan into a mental hellscape. More Paris on Politics is next.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Hey, Chicago, thanks for joining us. Well, you know, there'll be some interesting conversations at the Brat Stop this week as the eyes of the world descend on Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The town is preparing for tens of thousands of convention goers, visitors, and protesters, culminating in Donald Trump's nomination on Thursday evening for president. Fox 6 Milwaukee political reporter Jason Calvi has a sneak peek.
Kicking off Convention Week on Sunday, the Milwaukee 2024 Host Committee will welcome some 15,000 guests to the Summerfest grounds, the Henry Meyer Festival Park. Country music star Trace Atkins will play.
It has been so much fun, and especially to just give people an experience that's a little bit unexpected while still really celebrating what people know about Milwaukee and Wisconsin.
They can expect a taste of Wisconsin from a supper club, old-fashioned bar, beer garden, and lots of other Wisconsin and Milwaukee favorites. We spoke to the man helping plan the party, David Caruso.
I hope people take away from the welcome party just the overall sense that Milwaukee is a beautiful place that has a lot of terrific things to offer. The people here are extremely special.
There's still a last rush of work before the host committee's welcome party kicks off the grand old party.
So right now you can still walk through the security fencing, but come Sunday, you'll need that special credential to be able to get through the security gates. You can see this one. Looks like it's a little confused on where it is. It looks like it's an old sign, but it mentions Chicago's Soldier Field. Now that welcome party here in Milwaukee, it's hosted by the host committee. That nonpartisan group today announced setting a record for fundraising for RNC host committee as they said they smashed their goal, raising more than $85 million in Milwaukee. Jason Calvi, Fox 6 News.
Illinois won't be sending a huge congressional delegation to Milwaukee next week. That's because there are only 3 Republican congressmen to 14 Democratic in this state. But we are pleased to be joined by one of them now, Darren LaHood of Peoria, whose 16th congressional district stretches up to Galena and hits some of Chicago's outer suburbs. Representative LaHood, thanks for being with us. First off tonight, given Biden's press conference last night, how do you think the tenor of the presidential race would change should Biden step aside?
Well, Paris, thanks for having me on. I mean, let's face it, everything changed during that debate when people saw Joe Biden. And, you know, the question about his mental acuity was there before, but it was on steroids that night. And so what you've seen this last week in D.C., I spent the week in D.C., I mean, Democrats are panicking. There's a lot of bedwetting going on with Democrats because they know that President Biden isn't up to the task. And you see more and more members of Congress asking him not to be the nominee and to step down. And you saw the press conference yesterday that reinforced that narrative that is real.
It seems like some uncharacteristic silence from the top of your ticket, President Trump. Biden, as you mentioned, has been deemed as unfit by many, but so has the nominee of your party. We should remind everyone, convicted on 34 state felony counts in New York, found civilly liable for sexual assault, facing investigations into mishandling of classified documents and his role in January 6th. Does that make Trump unfit to serve?
It doesn't. I think if you look at the polling, I mean, you look at the 6 states that are that they're going to be the most competitive for the election. Trump is up in all of them. He's gone up since the debate. Partly is due to Biden just doing a terrible job. but it's also due to Trump focusing on the issues, focusing on what he did as president 4 years ago. All those things you mentioned, people are well aware of. They were well aware in the primary when he beat 9 other candidates to become the nominee. So I think people are focused on the issues that matter most. I think they see the political nature, particularly what happened in New York. I mean, you mentioned the convictions there. I'm a former state and federal prosecutor. What we were taught as prosecutors is to prosecute crimes, not people. I think people see that for what it is, and that's why the polling shows him being up in all of these states, even after voters see what happened in that case and others.
You are a former federal prosecutor. Do some of those federal cases concern you at all, just from the standpoint of being an attorney?
Well, if you look at the cases that you referenced, the one in Miami on classified documents, you look at the other one in D.C., we just saw the Supreme Court rule on presidential immunity, and I would argue it ruled in President Trump's favor that there is immunity for official actions that took place. I'm skeptical as a former federal prosecutor that these cases will even be able to go forward. We're going to find out. They're definitely not going to be decided in any way before the election.
All right, so you're about to head up north to Milwaukee for the RNC next week. The big question is, who will Trump's running mate be? Do you have any insight into who he might select?
Well, I would first say that we have a deep bench of strong candidates. It's been narrowed down, no doubt about it. But I'm going to just mention that I think Trump has been extremely disciplined and focused throughout the VP selection process, much different than he did 4 years ago or even 8 years ago. He has been, extremely focused on this. It's been buttoned down. I think the candidates that are out there all bring something different. Governor Burgum of North Dakota, maybe people didn't necessarily know him, but he's got a great business background, did a tremendous job with the energy industry in North Dakota. I think J.D. Vance is right there, senator from Ohio. As you look at the states, particularly in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, I think he brings a lot to the table. And lastly, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, I think he's right in the hunt also. I think he probably brings the most from an electoral standpoint to bringing more voters in across the country, particularly Hispanic voters, new voters, young voters. He's extremely smart on the issues. I think any of them would be a great running mate for President Trump. We'll find out soon enough, and there's a lot of excitement. And again, I go back to the reason why we don't know yet is the discipline that they've put forth with the selection process.
Seems like those are the consensus top 3 picks that you mentioned there. I want to bring up this Project 2025 from the Heritage Foundation, the conservative think tank. It's getting a lot of scrutiny right now. Calls for things like a nationwide abortion ban, firing a lot of federal workers and installing them with Trump loyalists, rounding up folks and deporting them. Do you support this plan?
Well, I listen. Similar to what President Trump said and a lot of other Republicans, I've never seen anything related to 2025. I think this has been a little bit of a diversion that Democrats have used. Listen, I'm very active in the party. I'm the I'm NRCC vice chair in charge of our Patriot program. I work with our leadership on a daily basis. I've not seen this. I think this is something, again, that the media and Democrats are trying to use as a diversion. I do know this, we are going to have a different form of governing under President Trump, similar to what he did the 4 years he was there, focusing on the private sector, focusing on jobs and opportunities. How do we bring down the cost of inflation? What we do about the unmitigated disaster at the southern border. I mean, these are all things. I don't know anything about 2025.
All right, you mentioned the party. The party in Illinois, Congressman, has seen better days. There was an election for a new chairman today. As we tape, we haven't gotten the official word yet. We think it's going to be Kathy Salvi. What do you hope comes out of this, and what's the future of the Illinois Republican Party?
Well, I think we have a bright future. We're going through a selection of a chairperson right now. We had 3 or 4 good candidates that put their name in the hat, all with good attributes to them. And we'll see what comes out of that. It'll be decided sometime today. And what I look forward with any of them is, again, focusing on the upcoming convention next week, but doing everything we can to win between now and November. If you look at the policies of J.B. Pritzker, one thing that I hear often is the $800 million in state taxpayer money that's going to fund illegal immigrants and illegal migrants in the state of Illinois. People are fed up. Crime, as you know, Paris, particularly in the city of Chicago and Cook County, is on everybody's mind. I think we're right on the issues as Republicans. And so whoever is selected as next chairwoman or man, whether it's Kathy Salvi or others, I think you're going to see a real focus on winning back seats at the state level and federal level, and winning on the issues, particularly the ones that President Trump will be focused on.
All right, Congressman Darren LaHood, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week in Milwaukee.
Sounds great, Paris. Thanks.
Up next on Paris on Politics.
Why another Illinois congressman wants Joe Biden to step aside.
Everywhere you look, you have history of the Tribune.
Chicago's most unique skyscraper, restored and reimagined.
Ooh, behind the curtain.
During construction, countless time capsules were discovered,
Had a letter from the sports editor of the Chicago Tribune,
including the most significant relic from the biggest scandal in Chicago sports history. What other wonders does the tower hold? Streaming on your smart TV, only at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms. Download and watch today.
We're going to the Crown. Let's do it.
Last night I was joined by Illinois Congressman Brad Schneider, who became the 11th Democratic member of Congress to call on Joe Biden to step aside. I began by asking him whether or not last night's press conference changed his mind.
Well, I don't think the press conference was really going to change anybody's mind. I think President Biden did fine in the conference. He clearly showed he has a robust and broad understanding of the issues we face as a country, the global issues. He was talking about NATO. This was on the follow-up of the conference marking NATO's 75th anniversary. I think the challenge is that there's anxiety every time the president is taking the stage, is having a press conference or going to a rally. And I heard from so many people. Last week at the parades, I did 8 parades for the 4th of July week, probably walked past more than 50,000 people, heard from constituents in my office, et cetera. And there's just a sense the stakes in this election are so high. The risk of a second Trump presidency are a threat to our democracy and our republic, and we have to win this election. And I believe we have this historic opportunity to pass the torch. The President Biden can, in a historic move, pass the torch to the next generation and set us on a course, not just to eke through the election, but to win the election, run through the end of the race, and win with a mandate to continue what has been this historic American experiment for the last 248 years.
When you say pass the torch, do you mean pass the torch to his vice president, Kamala Harris, to lead the ticket, or someone else?
Certainly a possibility. I know there's lots of conversations about who it might be, this one or that one. What I do know is that the Democrats have an extraordinary bench. Kamala Harris, as the president said tonight, is ready. If he wouldn't picked her 4 years ago, if he didn't think she was ready to step into the role on a moment's notice. We've got governors across the country, including here in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who have a track record not just of managing the executive role, but accomplishing many extraordinary things in Illinois, in California, in Pennsylvania, Maryland. You can run down the list, New Hampshire.
When it comes to Biden's health or his mental state, do you believe Congress, the media, the public have been misled to the true nature of his cognitive condition?
I'm not going to speculate on that. What is clear is we've seen every president age in office. It's a really tough job, most certainly the toughest job in the world. The president has shown his age, sometimes perhaps more so than others, and I think that's the concern about the debate. But what's clear to me is that people are clamoring for a next generation, someone who can say we have a vision for the future that builds upon the successes, especially of the last 4 years, the Biden administration, historic accomplishments from the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, CHIPS and Science Act, et cetera. Build on those and make sure we unite the country and move forward in the most positive way possible.
What do you think this is going to mean for Chicago's Democratic National Convention next month as this debate rages on in the party?
Yeah, I don't know. Here's what I hope for. If the president makes the call and says it's time to pass the torch, and does it in a way that presents a clear view to the country of the possibilities for our future and the people who can lead us there, my hope is that when we gather in August, in the third week of August in Chicago, we gather as a united party, showing the country and showing the world the best of what America has to offer, and demonstrating that the Democrats are ready to and the best prepared to lead the nation going forward.
And speaking of conventions, the Republican convention gets underway on Monday. What are you anticipating for Milwaukee?
Probably more of what we've seen through the Trump campaign. A lot of rambling, a lot of talk about retribution and revenge, a lot of threats to things that I consider important issues, whether it's the threat to women's reproductive rights, the threat to undo the progress we are making in combating climate change, the threat to the U.S. leadership on the global stage. The contrast from what we saw this week with America's role within NATO, President Biden strengthening that alliance at a critical time, if not for the president's work in bringing together NATO to help Ukraine fight Russia, we'd be in a very different place today than we are. If President Trump is elected, and I think you'll hear talk about it in Milwaukee, of pulling out of NATO, pulling away from the alliances, I think that's a real threat to our country.
All right, Congressman Brad Schneider, thanks for joining us, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Up next on Paris on Politics.
Delta 8 dangers, the nightmare one Illinoisan faced after ingesting this legal weed product.
Oh my God.
A Ghostbusters proton pack.
Harold Ramis wore this.
Indy's fedora.
That's his suit?
And an epic collection of other movie props hidden in a Chicago suburb.
Wow. On in.
Deep underground.
That heart is the beating heart from Temple of Doom.
Experience Hollywood history one prop at a time when we take you inside Nerdvana.
Yes!
Streaming on your smart TV. Only at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms. Download and watch today.
Finally tonight, Illinois lawmakers tried and failed to pass a ban on Delta 8 weed products in the state. Buying Delta 8 at a gas station or head shop is kind of like buying weed on the street. It's impossible for the consumer to know exactly what they're getting. One Illinoisan says she wished she'd known that before she bought it. She says the drug not only altered her mind, it changed her life.
Every parent's worst nightmare. Something you can't unsee. I would not wish it on my worst enemy.
Lori is a resident in rural LaSalle County and recounts the day 4 months ago when her daughter had a full-on psychiatric meltdown after ingesting Delta 8 weed that she purchased at a gas station. Her daughter was lost in a hallucinogenic fog for weeks.
Wasn't my daughter. It was like someone was standing there with a light switch, flipping it on and off. 1 minute she was angry, 1 minute she was sad, the next minute she was a little girl crying and singing little girl songs. She had no control over her own body.
You were in this hallucinatory state literally for 2.5 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. I felt like I was in a movie, and every day when I woke up, I had the people that I was hallucinating were like saying season 1, episode 2, season 2, episode 3.
Lori and her daughter asked us to conceal their identities. Her daughter says she had used medical marijuana to cope with PTSD. She mistakenly thought Delta 8 was the same. A doctor diagnosed her with drug-induced psychosis. The only drug found in her system at the time was Delta 8.
It wasn't laced with anything. We just think that it was an extremely high dose that triggered this hallucinogenic effect.
Lori's daughter spent nearly a month in the hospital before being transferred to an outpatient facility. She says she's recovering now thanks to a variety of psychiatric medication and especially thanks to the help of a service dog. Dr. Stephen Axe is a toxicology specialist at the Cook County Health and Hospital System. He says the particular danger with Delta 8 is that what you see on the packaging isn't necessarily what you get.
We don't know the dose, the quantity, and you'll have a range of effects, and it's not predictable because we don't know what the dose is.
There have been nearly 9,000 cases of Delta-8 poisoning reported to national poison control centers in the last 3 years. 41% of those were children below the age of 18.
There needs to be regulation of these products. Period. End of sentence.
The Illinois General Assembly considered but ultimately failed to pass a ban on hemp-derived weed products like Delta-8, thanks to furious lobbying from hemp retailers. But Pritzker says lawmakers should make it a priority in the coming months.
I think that you're going to see movement on it in the veto session in November or perhaps in January.
The hemp industry says it would welcome the same regulation as legal cannabis shops, but the legal weed industry wants Delta-8 run out of town entirely.
There's 800 pages of regulations that regulate the licensed cannabis industry here in Illinois, and there's none that regulate these stores that are selling products that are intoxicating from the same plant.
Charles Wu owns a legal Delta-8 cafe in Bucktown and says the stalemate has pushed businesses like his to self-police to root out bad actors like gas stations and head shops.
We are currently in the process of developing standards and even the labeling and the packaging, so there might be the equivalent of, you might say, a gold star or a checkbox of, hey, this not just a good hemp product, but it's been tested, it's been third-party verified by a reputable source. There's an enforcement, an industry internal enforcement body that is verifying these things. These products are going to be tracked and traced. All the things that are important to enable responsible use.
Lori and her daughters say they hope their story can spur lawmakers into action, whether it's tough regulation or an all-out ban.
We either regulate this stuff or we get it completely taken out of stores, because it is something that can be very detrimental to people.
I feel that the people that are actually selling it don't realize what they're selling and what it does to people's lives. It had turned our whole lives upside down.
We're happy to report that Lori's daughter is improving every day. And that is our show for this Friday evening. Enjoy the steamy weekend and stay tuned to Fox 32 Chicago for all the latest developments in politics. We'll be live from Milwaukee all next week. So long, everyone.
The Major League Baseball All-Star Game is deep in the heart of Texas, and Fox 32 Chicago is there, talking with our Chicago All-Stars and getting you ready for the game. Major League Baseball All-Star Live, Tuesday night, 5:30 on Fox 32.